Everyone, today is the first day of February. It's the 1st, 2022. The time is 10:02 a.m. Special meeting agenda for solid waste update. Attending are Commissioners Brooks and Filios. Commissioner Leslie Duncan is excused. Do we have any changes to the agenda? Hearing none, we'll get a report from our Director of Solid Waste, John Phillips. Go right ahead. First item is construction projects for 2022. Go ahead, JP.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thanks for having me, John Phillips. As far as construction projects go for 2021, I'm going to go ahead.
Turn on your mic.
Oh, yeah, you need to. Yeah,
Let me start over. Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for having me, John Phillips, for the record. As far as construction projects go for 2021, I'll start out with the Ramsey Z-Wall project.
22, or are you going back?
Sorry, you're right. This is now 2022.
Okay.
It started out as a
It's
21
okay.
project. It's now a 22 project.
It's
You're right.
okay.
So starting out for these projects, the Ramsey Z-Wall project, as you recall, TML Construction was awarded the bid for this project, and Jacobs Engineering is the engineer that's working with us on these future walls to be constructed for metal recycling at the Ramsey Transfer Station. Recently, we held a pre-construction meeting so that all parties involved are on the same page. Permitting through the city of Coeur d'Alene is shaping up nicely, and it appears to be on track. The IDPES, or stormwater permitting for construction activities through the Idaho Department of Environmental Quality, is also on track. TML Construction has submitted a preliminary schedule that has indicated that the estimated construction start date is to be towards early March of 2022, and the completion date is estimated at the end of May of 2022. Any questions about where we are on this project?
Nope.
Okay, thank you. So the Fighting Creek landfill, I've talked about the storage building, and you know that was up for bid recently. I'll touch on this real quickly, but then also later in the presentation. So only one bid was received for the project, and although this is one of those construction projects, and I want to mention it under construction projects, like I said, it really has more to do with current under review bids, and I'll touch on that one a little bit later. Other Fighting Creek landfill projects, the flyover you've heard me discuss. So every few years we take a look, we fly over the landfill, they take some images, and then there's some calculations to determine how much airspace is being used, how much soil is being used, and this information is then compiled into a couple of different documents, of which I recently received, and I know some minor details, but I want a more in-depth look at it before I give you a final report on what those documents say. But these documents do specify compaction densities of waste in place. I can tell you that in general, the waste in place, the compaction densities are up. So as landfills get older, generally the waste densities do go up, so that is to be expected. They also help estimate timing as to when new cells will need to be constructed. So we do have an upcoming cell, I believe, to be constructed in about 5 years, but I'll want to look at that documentation to make sure that the time frame's correct. Also, they help us calculate soil usage and in-place volumes of cover soil, so the dirt that's used to cover the garbage, and help us estimate excavation needs and timing for the construction of those cells, and or when we might need to shift areas for cover material. And so, like I said, I will be getting, once I get through all those details, I'll probably likely in 2 months when I come back for another update, fill the commissioners and the board in on that information. Any questions about that? Okay. South Cell landfill permitting process. So you know that we've been working on this. This is permitting an area that's south of the current active operations area for additional room for landfill space. Jacobs with Kootenai County Solid Waste and Community Development had a meeting about the conditional use permit submittal process, which is coming up. The meeting went well. As a reminder, letters were given to DEQ and Panhandle Health informing them that we intend to submit a CUP application in the near future. A final review by the Solid Waste Department in Jacobs is currently being performed before the actual submittal occurs. It's likely that this process, according to Community Development, could take up to 6 to 10 months, but a lot of that is dependent on how quickly we get them the information they need and also any findings that come up during the process. So it looks like we could have this completed by the end of the year, and that's what I'm hoping for. Any questions about South Cell landfill permitting? So moving on to the second.
You're doing a good job, so.
Okay, thank you. So moving on to the second item on the agenda, I'd like to discuss bids. So back to the Fighting Creek storage building. So current bids under review. Fighting Creek landfill had a 40 by 60 storage building, and we also performed some associated dirt work with that. Only one bid was received for that project. Kootenai County Solid Waste has reviewed the bid and will likely recommend the rejection of the bid due to pricing that is substantially higher than what we budgeted for the building. The pricing of the building actually tripled, not the overall bid price, but since we actually checked on it a year ago. So market conditions, including the lack of available contractors and escalated pricing on supplies, the building, other construction components, has likely contributed to this increased pricing and why we only received one bid.
So that makes sense to you.
Yeah, so what we're thinking is that it's likely that we'll recommend waiting 1 year and try to bid this again. Depending on the market, though, we may even wait 2 years.
Is there any horrible outcome if we wait a year or two?
No, I've checked with the landfill managers, and we could put this off for a year or two. So they've been making do. Our shop's running out of room, and we do need some extra storage for like plastic sheeting and other construction supplies, some trailers and things that really need to be out of the weather.
So
that we use
it's a
year-round.
pole building in essence.
It's
Is it heated?
It's a pre-engineered metal building that's set up for future heat.
Okay.
But it wasn't, we were not gonna heat it at the moment.
Mhm.
And so, it's better than a pole building, has good snow loads and all that, but the reason we didn't just go with the pole building is because this building may be needed for the next 70 years. So we wanted to go with a pre-engineered metal building.
Okay.
It's possible that we could reduce the specifications, but at this time, I'd like to keep the specs the way they are and just hold out, and hopefully the market corrects itself and there's more available contractors and some of these prices come down in the next year or two.
Makes sense.
So,
Thank you.
yep. Moving on to future bids, so short term, looking at some contract bid type things that are coming up. We have the transport services bid. So this bid is specific for the transport of waste from the transfer stations to the landfill. This is typically a 5-year contract with options to extend. We are planning to advertise this in late February of 2022 and planning an award in March. So you should plan on seeing that one. Another one that is coming up even sooner is the rural systems collection. And this is a bid for the collection and transport of waste from our 13 rural collection sites that are located all over the county. This used to be a 5-year contract, but we're going to actually go for a 7-year on this one. And the reason we're doing that is because the price of the metal containers, it's very expensive for new potential bidders to pay for all those containers that are required at those sites and recoup their money in a 5-year period. So we are looking at a 7-year contract with options to extend. The advertisement for this bid will begin tomorrow, and bids will be due by February the 22nd of 2022.
Okay.
Any questions on any of those bids coming?
No.
Okay. Moving on to the third item is rural sites. So I like to touch on rural sites because it's a touchy topic there for quite a while, and I want the public to be aware of what we're doing to try to improve the rural sites and then make sure that people aren't dumping on the ground and are taking care of their sites and enforcement's up to snuff, and that additional things we're doing to try to help those sites stay cleaner and not allow the abuse. So, as you know, the solid waste department had received several complaints about garbage on the ground at numerous sites. We installed some stickers on bins that listed some primary rules. Residents started policing their sites. The solid waste department then budgeted funds for patrolling of the rural sites by the sheriff's office, and they've been doing a wonderful job. We've seen a lot less abuse at the sites and items left on the ground since we've started those programs. But there's still some issues that aren't resolving themselves, and the sheriff's department has even suggested cameras at some of the sites to help with policing. The solid waste department is now looking at installing live feed cameras at the 3 southern sites, so Micah, Kidd Island, Sunup Bay, and Worley. These cameras would greatly help with policing enforcement and serve as a deterrent when it comes to continued future abuse. So these cameras that we're talking about installing would be cellular based, live feed, that the law enforcement could hook into, or the department could hook into and see what's happening live. So an officer could be located near the site, see the abuse occurring and be able to drive up and it's right then. Or they could review the footage at a later time. So we're currently checking into that, into the pricing and all the other details. So once I get a little bit more on that, I'll come back to the board and talk to you about it, but we did budget funds for this. Any questions about the rural sites? No? Okay.
Good.
So moving on to the final item, which is statistics, I always like to touch on what's going on with the department. How did we compare this last year to the year before? So in this, that's exactly what we're doing here is the solid waste statistics 2020 compared to 2021, a quick rundown. The landfilled waste was up 5.7% from 2020 to 2021. This figure is actually down from 2020, in which we experienced a 9.5% increase in the tons to the landfill. Waste growth appears to be slowing slightly, and it's more normalized when compared to previous years. The total waste landfilled in 2021 was 211,466 tons. In 2020, for comparison, it was 200,122 tons. Moving on to the Prairie Transfer Station, Prairie has experienced a slight downturn in 2021 compared to 2020 in regard to customer counts. So the customer counts, or the site visits, the amount of times people visited the site, were down about only 1.15%, so pretty similar, about 2,530 customer visits down. But the tonnage was actually up 4.16%, so there was bigger loads overall, probably due to mostly contractors have heavier loads coming in, more contractor activities. Ramsey customers were up by 1.66%, or up by a total of 6,308 site visits, and the tonnage was up by 7.3%, or 10,252 tons. With that, if you don't have any questions, that would conclude my information. Do you have any questions about statistics?
Comment. I think you guys are doing a great job. The fact that we don't have a room full of people complaining, because there isn't anything to complain about. There are isolated happenstances where a bag's on the ground or a smell gets out of the dump,
Yeah.
but you're on top of it.
Yeah, we do try. So any odor complaints, just bringing those kind of things up, we
I know.
try to immediately respond. I call, even on Sundays, I will call people back that submit a complaint via email to me or call my phone. I will immediately respond.
I just think it's a tribute
Yeah,
to
thank
you and
you
your
for that.
department.
Yep.
Great job.
Thank you.
Are we getting any better handle on the Washington people who come over here and have dumping done over here?
We try. So at the scale house, employees are trained to always look for Kootenai County license plates, and in the event there's a Washington license plate, typically they'll ask, did the waste come from Idaho? Contractors are, of course, smart, and even if it didn't come from Idaho, they may or may not, say that, yes, it's from Idaho. I did the work here. It's difficult to track those down, but we do have sheets that we give contractors. It's kind of like an affidavit where they have to say where the waste came from, the address, the site, and then they sign and say that I swear.
I'm on
this is
record a
truly
little
correct.
bit.
Yeah,
'Cause
and then we can audit that.
Of course, certainly the areas in the north part of the county are a little more, or a little less likely to have people, small contractors. I don't worry about the big contractors. They do a good job. I'm worried about the small contractors,
Yeah.
the mom and pops, who don't want to drive up here, who dump it in the bins or try
For the
to.
rural
or
sites.
Rural sites, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the two sites that are manned, we have a pretty good handle on those, but the sites that are still unmanned, those, it's kind of a free-for-all out there. So that's why we're looking at cameras and, it's likely possible future consolidation of the sites, but we're still evaluating those things.
You're doing a great job as far as I'm concerned. Thank you.
Thank you.
So JP, to what would you attribute the fact that the waste growth, that the landfill was up only 5% versus 9.5% last year? Is it a shift in the market? Is it fewer, how do I put this? Residential construction, because of the shortage of materials and labor, might have slowed a little bit year over year. I mean, you could be getting more waste, but at the same time, because of the slowdown, because of the shortage of both material and labor, I don't know. I'm just wondering if you wanted to speculate.
It's hard. My crystal balls is probably about like yours. I do think that construction material's up, so it could be that residential waste is pretty much holding, even though the construction's up.
Okay.
I don't know if that would have anything to do with COVID money running out. There was quite a bit of money handed out the previous year, and so I think that may have contributed to increased waste.
I see a lot more people doing more conscientious recycling too.
They do that. Yep, we try to definitely keep our recycling up. Under our new recycling contract, we don't take as many things as we used to, but we do promote recycling. So I'm not 100% sure why, but it has returned to a more typical rate. So 2020, for some reason, we saw really high numbers, and so now we're coming back down into that 5%.
A lot of people were home because of shutdowns or whatever. So there might have been a lot more work going on around the house.
Yeah,
and therefore more waste. You don't anticipate outgrowing the transfer stations anytime soon, do you, Prairie and Ramsey?
So we did budget funds. I do anticipate that occurring. We did budget funds to take a look at the Ramsey transfer station this year on ways we can improve functionality, getting people in and out quicker, improve efficiencies. I know that transfer station needs some expansion. It only has one tunnel for loading 18-wheelers or garbage trailers. It also has a number of Z-walls, but we do need to improve because there's so many people that come through that site. So we need to figure out how to get people in and out quicker. I do have some ideas that I've kicked around with the engineers, and so we will be looking at that. Prairie was built with a future vision of one end of the transfer station being able to be kicked out and expanded so that we can handle more customers, and also the rail is close by in case we ever needed to rail garbage somewhere. But right at the moment, that's not on the table.
But you're not worried about Ramsey being filled up, so to speak.
Anytime soon.
No, customer counts are high, and we want to keep our wait times to a minimum. So sometimes people now, they can experience wait times of 15, 16 minutes, which seems very high. If it's 7 or 8 minutes, isn't so bad in the summer, but people, they want to be in and out, get through that line in just a couple minutes. So what we want to do is bring those wait times down. It's super infrequent to have a wait time as high as 15 or 16 minutes. That's usually something's wrong.
Short-term planning, for you is 5 and 10 years out.
Yeah, it is. It is. And Ramsey's, has been there for quite some time. And, I'm sure that when it was constructed on the outskirts of town, nobody thought that Coeur d'Alene would do what it was going to do, or that the transfer station would become as busy as it is.
What's happening with that property directly south of the landfill where nobody's allowed yet, and it's grassed over and they're monitoring it?
So that's the area that I'm looking at south landfill permitting, and that's the area where the CUP needs to be modified in order to incorporate some of that land. The county had purchased additional property in that area, and it's not a whole lot of acres, but it wasn't originally included in the permitting of all of the landfill property, so we have to wrap that in.
What's the future of that land, though, where there's grass now?
I'd have to show you the map, but it's a large area that is designated as future landfill.
Okay. Very good.
Very interesting, very informative.
Very interesting.
I have nothing else to add. Public comment? Anyone? Okay. I've got 10:21, meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good job.